Hello, and thanks for joining me today. I am really glad you're here because today we're going to have a real and honest conversation about something that many of us have faced but often don't talk about enough. And that's the impact of toxic work environments on our emotional well being. We often think that once we leave a difficult job, the stress and the strain gets left behind, right? But the truth is, those experiences can linger much longer than we expect, impacting not just our professional lives, but our personal lives as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is 𝗀𝘂𝘂𝗹𝗱. I am a self-care strategist. I work primarily with female entrepreneurs, helping them to put systems in place, to self-care systems in place, strategies that will help them to have that quality of life personally and professionally, have that clarity, vision, time management, energy management, emotional burnout and professional burnout, the warning signs, and being able to not have to go through it and recognize those signs. And I talk a lot about this because I really feel it's important for us to really pay attention to our health, our well-being, so that we can show up as the best of ourselves. So today I want to share with you my journey that I haven't really spoken about in detail before. I've talked to friends, I've talked to family members, but I had back-to-back experiences in two work environments. And these didn't just drain me emotionally, they shaped how I saw myself, my value, and even how I approached new opportunities. So I'm going to talk about when it all began back in 2014. I'd been in law for like several years by this point. It's now been over 4 decades, but I'd been in law for quite some time, and I was living on the west coast of Canada at the time. And I was working at a place where the person I was filling in for someone who was on maternity leave, and her boss was challenging. But I was excited for the role because it was a brand new position that I would be able to learn something new, something that I hadn't been exposed to before. And I thought, why not take that opportunity, right? So I ended up working for this person who, what was really strange to me, was a completely different person outside of the office than inside the office. And so I found in my experience with him, as he would explain things to me, I felt like he was being disrespectful, condescending, treating me like I was a child, rather than someone who'd been in the profession for quite some time. Maybe not in that particular field of law, but I was very much aware of, paying attention to detail. I had great references. I had a great work history, and I really applied myself. So it wasn't for lack of me not being a good person, or I should say a good employee. But what happened was, this person was extremely verbally abusive, and he was harsh to me in front of other people, often raising his voice in his office when I was trying to, when I would actually stand up for myself because I had had enough at some points. And he would say things to me, and I would even have people commenting like, I can't believe he said that to you. I can't believe he talks to you that way. And I often found myself leaving the conversation and heading straight to the restroom, to the women's restroom, and actually breaking out into tears, because it had compounded over time. It was just happening over and over and over again. It wasn't just a one-time incident. It was just happening many, many times. And what that ended up doing was, it really put me on edge. Every time I was around him, I doubted my abilities. And I have always been a person who pays extreme attention to detail. It's very important to me to do my job well, especially too if I'm learning something new, to ask questions, to make sure I'm on the right track, doing the right thing. But I was bringing not only that doubt, but that stress home with me. Again, explaining to my husband what was happening. And there was a lot of tension around that. I was anxious, fearful that I was going to be making mistakes, because I always felt like I could never do anything right. I had a constant dread of going to work. I would wake up feeling great, but as soon as I would get on the train to go into Vancouver, which is where I was working, I had just an instant dread overcome me as soon as the train stopped at my stop in Vancouver. And I felt like I was always walking on eggshells. I felt depleted, unable to unwind after work because I was just so wound up from the day. And it really, because I kept bringing this home, how I was feeling, talking to my husband about it, because I just needed support and I didn't know where to get it. And, I'm leaning on my husband, and he eventually intervened because on my way to work, unbeknownst to me, one day I'm traveling to work and he called my boss. He called the office and he spoke to him before I got there. And he told him that he had given me permission to quit my job if this behavior continued. So they had a conversation. I got to work that morning, and he called me into the office and he said, "Is everything okay? Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, why wouldn't I be?" And he then proceeded to tell me that my husband had called. Now, I was mortified. I was upset that my husband had called because I didn't want it to come to that, but he'd had enough. And I understand that now looking back, that he'd had enough of, what had been going on, that the only thing he could do was to call and, plead his case around, because I was bringing it home. I really understood the lessons from this was I had to learn to recognize how damaging this environment was for me, not just on my professional life, because as I said, I was doubting my ability to do a good job, to do the work. I was starting to doubt that I was even good at what I did. But it also impacted my personal life and then my well-being, because I just was always down and not happy. And I didn't realize until way into working there, I'd been there, I think I was covering that maternity position for about 7 months by that time, almost 8 months. And I didn't recognize that I should have really spoke up and talked to HR so that I could leave that position, so I could preserve my emotional and mental health, until finally I did have enough, and I did reach out to HR, and they ended up moving me back into more of someone who would go in and fill in different roles while people were away on vacation, sick days, things like that. And I thrived there. And I loved that because I was able to move around and meet new people. I got to meet a lot of people in the firm. And I finally understood that how this experience left me vulnerable, I didn't understand it at the time, but hindsight now, which as we know is 2020, that this experience really left me vulnerable to repeat the pattern in my future work environments. I didn't know it at the time, but as I left this toxic working environment and we ended up moving down to California, my husband and I, that's when I found another position. I had applied for many different jobs, and one that I did want, I didn't get. But there was one position working as an executive assistant. It was actually the way that the job was first presented to me was different from how it finally turned out to be, and they changed things. But I ended up going through a staffing agency who found me this job, and working for a law firm, 2-man law firm. I was working for the managing partner as his assistant. And what I didn't know is that I was now stepping into another verbally abusive, toxic work environment. I had left myself open to that, not recognizing that I should have been looking for the signs. There were signs there. I just didn't recognize them as signs, because at that point I was looking for work and I needed to have a job by that time. And so I said yes. I ended up staying there for it was like for 3 months. It was a 3-month, obviously 90-day trial period. And before the 90 days was up, I ended up telling the staffing agency that I did not want to take the position on full time, because I felt like he was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of personality. He would say one thing and then completely do a 180 and say he didn't say it, even though there will be witnesses to him saying something. And I documented everything. I started documenting everything because I needed to protect myself. I needed to make sure that I had written it down and that I remembered it correctly. And uh, what ended up happening was at the end of July, so this had been 3 months, at the end of July, the last day, my last day, I was really happy that it was my last day and I was moving on. The office manager talked me into staying. He had, for the last week, been really cool, great to work with, and I was tricked. And so I ended up saying, yes, I would stay. And so for a couple more weeks into my first, now I'm in as a full-time employee, and 2 weeks go by, he's been great. And then all of a sudden, just like that, a switch back to the way he was before, how he was treating me. And so he would do things in front of people, saying things to me, belittling me in front of the other legal assistants, paralegals in the office, to the other attorneys in the office. He would call me into his office for meetings and treat me really badly. I have him on tape saying that, what do you want to do? What do you want me to do? Fire you? Like, he was threatening my position, just the way he would talk to me. And I remember in January of 2016, it was my last straw moment when he called me into the office, and he had me sitting with another lawyer and the office manager, and it felt like they all three were teaming up and picking on me about my job performance. And by that time, I got up after the meeting, got in the car. On my way home, I called the headhunter, or the staffing person, and I said, I'm out of here for real this time. And she said, okay. And I told my husband, and he said, good for you, because this isn't good for you to be in an environment like that. I then went back into the office and I gave them 2 weeks notice. But the funny thing about that was that, again, he then switched it off and was being really nice. And so because I had only done it verbally, I then immediately typed up my firm resignation and sent it to him, to the other partner in the firm, and to the office manager, to make it legally like binding. I'm out of here, basically, and this is my resignation. And it seemed like he was fine with that. He didn't say anything. It was, as you know, I don't know, maybe he felt like he would be able to get me to change my mind. But in the very last day of me being there, the office manager did try to talk me into it again. And I said, no, this time the answer is no. I have to take care of me. This is not a place for me to work. I can't work like this. I have to move on. Now, that was really, really one of the hardest things for me, knowing that the way that I was treated by him in front of other people, in front of all the other lawyers, the other staff members, and feeling belittled. As I said, I have a great work history. I've worked with some incredible lawyers over my tenure, and some of them telling me that I've been one of, if not the best assistant that they've ever had. I have it in writing. I have great reference letters. And so, but what happened was, these two experiences really undermined my confidence, especially the second one. And it was just so hard. One of the things that was really hard too about this second experience was that this person was so, he micromanaged every move that I made, including any decision that I made, how I wrote my emails. I had to have them approved by him. And yet when people were trying to get information and following up and he wouldn't be available, I would get in trouble for not responding. So there was this, like, I didn't know what to do, like that. He was confusing me. Either I can respond on my own, or you have to approve my emails right away so I can respond. And it just was like this tug of war and this mentality that he had, that I just had enough. it ended up, after I left, I come to find out that the office manager was fired. Also, one of the other assistants quit, and one finally, who was a senior assistant paralegal, she ended up quitting as well. So he's apparently had several assistants over the years, and he has treated them pretty much all poorly. And I just don't know how someone can work like that. But I know for me, what ended up happening was what this did was, once I it was like I had to go through a detox. And I don't know if you feel that, if you've ever gone through something like this, but I felt like I had to go through a detox, to the point where this was the end of January. It took me 2 months to find my next job, which I ended up loving. And then this is the same law firm that I still support today, but in my own independent contracting business. But I ended up really, having to detox from that. And I really felt the way, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I didn't have the confidence when I went into this new position to be able to write emails and send them without actually asking one of the lawyers, whoever the work was for, is this okay? And I started over time just realizing I needed to just have the confidence that what I was doing was right. And I would write emails, and I've been doing that ever since. I just built up my confidence again. But it was really hard in the beginning because I was going through detox of being micromanaged, to the point where every move I made was being questioned, was under a microscope, to then having a little bit more flexibility, but not feeling fully confident that I could trust myself, that my abilities, because of what I went through. And this is over a 2-year period. And so what I'm trying to say is this, there are warning signs, like maybe you're uncomfortable during meetings. Maybe you have a lack of trust. Maybe you're constantly feeling on edge. Maybe you are seeing those red flags, but you've convinced yourself that it would be different this time, or that you could make it work, just like I did in the second scenario, where at the end of July, I was on my last day and he'd been great, and I got talked into staying again. Also knowing that, paying attention if your anxiety level is like at a 10, or you're constantly second guessing yourself and doubting your abilities. Maybe you have difficulty sleeping. This is something that was happening to me. I had difficulty sleeping because my brain was always on, asking myself if I was doing the right things, and maybe always being on a high alert to make sure, I always felt like I was looking over my shoulder all the time. Like, okay, am I doing things right? Is he going to turn around, do a 180 now that he changed his mind on these instructions that he gave me? And trying to figure out how to really manage that. Also burnout, right? Because I started burning out. I started really getting irritable, to the point where I was bringing it home with me. And that's not fair to my husband, because he was there to support me, but I really didn't have that support. So I started realizing, as now, all these years later, and being in self-development for as long as I have, and understanding now that as I'm going through this 24-week series with you around professional burnout, and recognizing my own stories and patterns from before, I recognize now that I was repeating that pattern from 2014 and going into that next job in 2015, from one toxic environment to another. I do acknowledge that I took a brave step, and that I left that second job despite I was really anxious and nervous about my future, but I knew that was the only move I had. It left me with emotional scars, for sure, because it did affect me in my next role. I was in the fear of making decisions, second guessing myself, feeling hesitant to trust my own judgment. But I learned that over time, as I was detoxing from it, that things would get better as I just allowed myself to step into the confidence that I do know what I'm doing, that I've always known what to do. I've got a great work history, and that no matter what, those experiences are not not every experience that I've ever had, because I said I've been in law for over 4 decades now, and not every experience has been like that. I have had a previous experience of someone who was similar to my the last experience I had in 2015, but this was quite a few years before. But I didn't really think about it because I got out of that after a really short period of time. But one of the things I do want to say is helping you, like, is if you find yourself right here in this moment, this is what you're noticing about your own work history right now. Maybe you are in a toxic environment. I want to share with you that the first step for you to break free is to recognize the signs that you are in a toxic environment and understanding how your past experiences may be influencing your present choices. That's the first thing. I also want to encourage you to self-reflect on it and to look honestly at your patterns, what you're tolerating, and why you're tolerating it. You know, one of the things that I did, like I said, way back when I had that first experience of working with someone like that, I tolerated it because I needed the job. We needed the money at the time, and but I did feel trapped in a job that was just, I felt, sucking the life out of me. So it's really important to look honestly at your patterns and see, you know, what you are tolerating and why you're allowing that behavior. I also want to emphasize to you the importance of seeking support. I believe community is really, really important. A supportive community of people who can support you through this. People who might have gone through something similar as you, who get you, who understand your journey is great. Maybe a trusted mentor, a therapist if you need to talk through it, and even a coach, right? A life coach can help you through all of this. Also, because when you talk to someone, that's going to be able to provide a fresh perspective and help you see the patterns that you may not be recognizing on your own because you're in the midst of it. And someone on the outside can actually see it because they're not going through it. Also, learning to set clear boundaries to protect your emotional and your mental health. Like, what are you willing to put up with? Being able to, like, say, this is the behavior I'm willing to accept, but I'm not willing to accept this, and really holding yourself accountable to that. And if that means that you either have the conversation with your human resources department, if that doesn't work and you need to find another position, then so be it. But you really need to protect your health, because going to work is something that we do every day, whether you're a business owner or whether you are a corporate employee, or whether you're an employee or a business owner, you're going to be going to work, right? And you want to be able to be in an environment that makes you happy, that brings you joy, that you feel confident in, that you trust your decisions, that you don't feel like you're constantly on eggshells. You want to feel good about that. So I encourage you to really start thinking about that and take small steps. Learn to take small steps to rebuild your trust in yourself and your confidence in yourself by making small decisions and then celebrating them. Like when I said I had a hard time in the beginning of sending emails at this new job that I really loved, I had to just start small, and I started becoming more confident that it was okay. I was doing a good job. As I said, it's been over 6 years now that I've been supporting them in this new role, my own business, and I've been doing what I believe is a good job for them. I've been getting great reviews from them from their clients, and so that means I'm on the right track. Also, know that it's okay to make mistakes. And maybe even finding yourself in a repeated situation. The goal is really to learn and grow from these experiences and start really becoming more self-aware of your patterns so that you don't repeat them. And be kind to yourself, because again, we can beat ourselves up for like, oh, I can't believe I did this to myself again. I'm so stupid. Or rather just say, you know, I found myself in this situation again. What am I going to do to protect myself? How can I better this situation? How can I get myself into a place where I feel good, where my well-being is supported? And then recognize your progress as you do that. So as we wrap up today, I want to remind you that recognizing emotional burnout and breaking free from toxic patterns is a journey, one that requires self-awareness, support, and a commitment to your own well-being. You don't have to navigate this alone. If you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, you can message me and we can have a chat to see how I can support you. You can check out your communities. I'm sure if you don't have a community, look for communities that can support you in this as you go through what you are going through. Or your own trusted circle of people in your life that you trust, someone that you can lean on for support, whether it's a mentor, a friend, even if you have therapy, you're going through therapy. All of these people in these roles can help you get through this. I also encourage that if you've ever found yourself in this position before, where you have experienced a toxic work environment, to take some time to reflect on your experiences so that you can recognize your own patterns and don't repeat it just in case. Because like I said, years ago, I had that experience and then I didn't have it again for like, gosh, let me just see. It was 6 years, maybe about 7, 8 years later that I had that second one in 2014, and then again right into 2015. So recognizing your patterns now can help you to avoid it. So some reflective questions for those of you who have experienced it before are like, looking back, what patterns or signs do you now recognize that you missed at the time? Okay. And then how have you grown or changed since leaving that toxic environment, and what boundaries have you set to protect yourself moving forward? Because these are good questions for you to still keep yourself on the right path to being taking care of your well-being. The work environment is important because you spend a lot of time there, whether you are working for someone else or you are the boss. You're spending a lot of time there, and you want to make sure that your well-being is taken care of. Now, if you're currently experiencing this now, here are some questions to help you as you move forward. What are some warning signs or feelings you're currently noticing that could indicate a toxic work environment? And then what steps can you take today to prioritize your well-being, even if you're not ready to make a big change? Because I know change can be really scary and hard. It can feel hard. So I want to be able to just support you there. I'll make sure that these questions go into the comments once the video is over. Again, I want to encourage that you reach out to your community, your trusted circle, or even myself to get that added support so you don't go through this alone, because it's not fun. I've been there, I experienced it, I understand it. So if this is you or has been you, know that I've been on this journey before. Thanks so much for joining me today. I truly hope that you found something valuable in what I've shared, that it helps you recognize the importance of your own well-being, and that you are worthy of a healthy, supportive environment, both in your personal life and in your professional life. Your health and happiness should always come first, and it's never too late to make choices that honor that truth. Remember, your well-being is worth the investment. Take care and keep choosing you.